Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, everyone. Tamara here again. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Stephie Flood, and we'll be talking about deepening relationships. Be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. Thanks for joining me, Stephie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think so. This will be a good topic. There's a lot of Instagram and stuff that talks about how to, like, if you're triggered from the past and you're not really mad at the person. So I think we could get more into that. But I want to start with how you got into or wanted to do this for a living.
So I tell people all the time that you don't become a therapist because stuff was normal growing up. And so I think like a lot of us, my parents are very deeply religious, and they had a lot of ideas from their own past stuff about how they wanted me to be as a human. And religion played a big part in that. So they had me sign a purity pledge when I was 16 and place it on the White House lawn for Bill Clinton. I had a boyfriend at the time. So I think that purity pledge didn't last all that long. And so their next step was like, well, you guys should get married. We did. And thank goodness, actually, it all worked out. We are still married. And then at the time, I just was really lost. It took probably another decade before my husband really was like, I really think you should be a therapist. Went ahead and got a master's degree in counseling psychology. And pretty much out the gates, I knew I wanted to be in private practice. I knew that I wanted to primarily work with adults. We ourselves were having a multitude of children. So we have 4 kids. We had 4 kids in 5 years. We tell people all the time because we didn't know how that worked. And then as I built my private practice, it really shifted into couples kind of organically, naturally. That's just, I think, who I attracted. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, a lot of couples struggle with intimacy issues. And that tends to be a subject that a lot of people, therapists, tend to shy away from because, that seems really overwhelming, or, I don't really know what to say. And so it was a topic that I felt comfortable with. And then just kind of in the way I grew up, like these messages that I was getting about intimacy and what should and shouldn't be happening made me want to talk to other couples about it. And that's where we landed. So I've been in private practice now for 16 years. I just started developing courses so that I could chat with more people and help more people because there's only so many you can do one-to-one. So that's kind of my trajectory of my career path.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I get that because I used to do stand-up comedy and you could do like a room of people at the time, but you can't do multitudes of people unless you have a platform like a podcast or a course or something like that. So totally makes sense. I get it. All right. And then you talked about intimacy. So when you say intimacy, do you mean like, is it generally sex or is it all the stuff around sex too? And then, yeah, just... So most of
the time people come to me, and I use the word intimacy because the internet's don't generally love that word, sex. They get very upset about it. And then they kick me off their platforms. So we've little workaround with the word intimacy. They like that one better. But I also do believe that that's actually what people are really craving and wanting. And as we change and as we grow, and what we wanted in our 20s is not necessarily what women and even men want in their 40s. Totally different. So using the word intimacy, I think, gives a broader idea of just versus sex, like straight sex. And so when I talk to couples, we really talk about all the ways in which we feel close and connected, whether that is through touching or if it's on the emotional side and how you stay deeply connected. And it sort of encompasses all of it.
Okay. Well, do you want to jump in either with I know one of the topics is understanding past relationships. I know that's, a lot of people think they're mad at the person they're with, but really there's something from the past. So I want to talk more about how that works. Or
when I talk to people about their past, usually we kind of jump in, with couples, and we sort of dive into history a little bit. And the history is, mom and dad married, divorced, what their relationship was kind of like, what your kind of childhood growing up stuff was like. I definitely ask people about religious feelings because it does play. Sometimes people will tell me, well, there were no rules about sex. and my parents never talked to each other and didn't touch each other. Well, that'll give you a lot of information about how you might act later on in life in a relationship, or the things that you might really want. When we talk about, past relationships that didn't end up being your primary relationship, there are things and people that come into our life that teach us things and also hurt us. And, we want to be paying attention to, this thing that my partner might be saying that they have no idea that it really is hurtful to us, or that it brings up something deeper to us. And our go-to immediate response is to react. And then they're like, I don't understand, why are you so mad at me? I didn't say anything. I just asked you to take out the trash or whatever it was, And so we dive deep into, hey, maybe what are some of the things that may have hurt you in the past or created issues that, it turns out that's actually how I'm responding now to my partner. And how do we change that? How do we come at that in a different way? How do we feel inside our body to recognize that those emotions are coming up? And then how can we respond differently to our partner? And vice versa. And then our partner kind of knows too, I'll use myself as an example. Being an only child, my husband sometimes is totally fine with our 4 children just kind of being crazy and wild and running around and all the things. And if I come into the mix, it feels really overwhelming to me. And it's overwhelming because I was an only child. I was by myself all the time, like lots and lots of noise and chaos and craziness, like throws me for a loop. So we had to adjust and work that out. And a lot of times I just had to ask him, I was like, is it normal for them to like do these things? Cause I have no idea. Like, should they be like screaming and yelling at each other? Is that okay? Like, cause I feel like I should do something. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And he really struggles, honestly, with quiet and being really calm. He loves chaos. He loves swirl, and he feels super comfortable in it. And so sometimes when I'm trying to like dial the temperature down, he will be like, this is boring. Like, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. We should go somewhere. Let's get out of the house. Let's do, things like that. Yeah. So paying attention and understanding that about your partner.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I know I usually talk about books. So are there any books that you found helpful to have couples read, or just a go-to Bible or just something?
I really like the book Attached. And it talks about our attachment styles, the way in which we, bond with our person. And we get our attachment styles typically from our parents, from our primary caregivers. Some of us have secure attachments, which means like the bond that we formed with our parents was pretty stable, very normal. We got all our needs met. Lots of us got like an insecure attachment where we weren't really sure whether our parent, our primary caregiver, was going to be there or not be there, or it was inconsistent. And some of us have avoidant attachment styles, meaning like our primary care person just straight did not attach or bond to us. And so anybody that tries to get close feels scary and foreign. And so take an avoidant person and an insecure person and try and put them together, and you get all kinds of fun things happening. Yeah. So the book Attached is a great book for couples. Anything by John Gottman, I definitely love, respect, and just think that their messaging and the way he approaches couples is just fantastic. It's based on research. I geek out on the science behind why we all do what we do. And they really they have a love lab where they studied people. So anything by John and Julie Gottman is phenomenal. Yeah,
I definitely agree on both of those. I've had a few episodes on attachment styles and him too. Actually, I don't think I've mentioned John Gottman, but I should have. Yeah, he's definitely great information, like you said. All right. And then if there was more to talk about the past relationship stuff, I know I may have interrupted that part, or just, the deepening in general, like how do you approach couples and like what actually works for them? Hi, everyone. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to point out that there is a send us a text message at the very beginning of the description, and you can use that to send an anonymous question or comment. So I'd really appreciate it. All right. Thanks.
So sometimes couples think, and I think, times have changed. So, it used to be like how many sexual partners you've had and, how that does jealousy play into that and, things like that. I think because we are more apt to have multiple sexual partners prior to our primary person, like those issues have kind of dwindled down. I think usually what comes up for couples when they are got some jealousy stuff going on, it's usually feelings around a story or an idea that they heard about your past partner. Like, oh, Bob used to take me on, these extraordinary vacations. And now you're with John, and John maybe doesn't ever like going on vacation. And so John now feels jealous of Bob. Like, oh, Bob used to do this thing for you and you're not going to love me. And so it comes up a bit. Social media also comes up quite a bit, and having really good boundaries around how we interact. We have access now to ex-boyfriends, to co-workers from the past, to all kinds of people. And so as a couple, you really want to sit down and have very clear boundaries and understanding and some guidelines for each other, expectations of, hey, this is who we talk to on the internet. This is who we decide, hey, you know what? It's not a good idea. We're just not going to invite these people into our life. Do we talk about like how if an ex or somebody like calls us up or messages us or something along those lines, like, do we tell our partner or what do we do? My advice is always yes, that we want to just be clear and honest. Hey, this is who messaged me. This is what the message said. How would you like me to respond? Like, or not respond. And that way you just don't get into a lot of that messiness that can happen. And again, social media is tough. Like it is tough for couples. Again, we just have access on our phones all the time to all kinds of people.
Yeah. And the sites that like hide messages and stuff too. So.
Yes. I do not recommend using any of those types of sites if you are in a long-term committed relationship and you would not like to get in huge fights with your partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a good idea. Yeah. So how do you, like deepen? I know you said have boundaries, and like what are some other things you can to increase or reconnect? I know you had mentioned that earlier too, if you want to say more, whichever way you want to go.
Yeah. So when right now, like kind of my focus has been couples that have been married for a long time, like myself, got some kids in the mix, got, pets and a huge life, and you're, probably both working and you're running around and you're doing all the things and you're doing life. You're doing the business of being married probably really well. And then you sort of look at your partner and you're like, oh, I don't really feel like we are connected. I don't feel like we are, young and fun anymore. Or like, when was the last time like we just hung out and talked and, had a glass of wine together? And for a lot of couples, that space gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So a lot of couples will come to me just because they feel, and then you add sex into that, and sex typically is the first thing to go. Start to notice like, oh, it's been a week. Oh, it's been 3 weeks. Oh, it's been 4 months. Oh, it's been a year. Yeah. And, that's usually people will come to me when the house is on fire, which means, it's 4 months or longer that they have had any sort of connection, intimacy or anything. And they're trying to figure out how to get it back. So the way we build it back is to slow and steady. Almost like when you were first dating. Now, usually most people are first dating in their 20s and it's hot and heavy and you're real quick to do all the things. But we kind of want to do it in a slower fashion, meaning like, hey, let's start building in some physical touch every single day, because most of us forget to do that. We honestly forget to give our husband or our wife or partner a hug or a kiss every day. even twice a day. And I start to recommend to people like, hey, and this actually comes from John Gottman, but it's called the 10-second kiss. And we start to build that in. If you've ever kissed your partner for 10 seconds, you will know that it is an eternity. If you count it out, you're like, whoo, that is way longer than I thought it was going to be. But then you got to get used to it again. And you're like, oh yeah, that actually feels really good. And the reason it feels good is because it gives us enough time to get serotonin and dopamine flowing. And then we start to get that bond back. So we start with that. We start with hugging and kissing every day. We start to look at how can they build connection and time together? What can we do in their week that says, hey, can we go for a walk every day around the block? It's one of the secret things that I tell couples to do, actually, is to go for a walk around the block, because usually you are not on your phone. Hopefully you don't have to make eye contact. So it doesn't necessarily have to be weird. You just kind of talk about your day. Usually you can either strap the kids in the stroller and haul them with you, or you can leave them at home because you're not gone for too terribly long. And it gives couples a chance to really like just be themselves, be together, have some conversations that they might not be able to have when there are dogs and kids and life all kind of running around them. So we do that, and we just slowly build from there till we get to the point of like, okay, when do you guys think it would be the best time to be intimate? Like, did you guys just get kind of out of a routine of like, Saturday night was our date night? By the way, I don't actually recommend that. Usually we're too tired. But like, hey, how does Sunday morning look? Like, usually we don't have too much going on. We can park the kids in front of an iPad for 30 minutes. And, maybe that's our day. My husband and I, our date day is Friday afternoon, actually. We go have lunch together every Friday as much as we possibly can, because that's the time when, honestly, we don't have to worry about kids. They're in school. So we don't have to get a babysitter or do all that. We don't necessarily have to dress up. We can, it takes an hour and a half out of our day when we're both working, and it is our time together every single week. It has been so connective for us. And when we just start to talk to couples, or when I talk to couples about, where could we find that time? Usually you can find time somewhere. So, and it doesn't have to be huge and big and all the things. So that's how we start to build or rebuild intimacy and rebuild connection back into your relationship in your life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just start dating. Well, yeah, like I said, carving out time. Because if you want to do something, you'll make the time for it. And that lets you know if you're both working on it too. If you're both trying to make the time. So give credit for at least trying, I guess, at first. If it's
And I tell people this too. We're always looking for our partner to do something. Like, oh, if he does this, then I'll do this. And I really, really encourage people to be the one to start first.
Yeah.
And when you take responsibility for yourself and say, hey, I want to start making the marriage better, it really is, it is really life-changing for both of you. Like, you tend to change as a human because you're doing different things. Your partner starts responding different, and it shifts. And typically speaking, when somebody is being change their behavior and it's less combative, or it's more open, or it's more loving, our person tends to respond in kind, and then we're off to the races.
Yeah. I've definitely heard that before and seen it firsthand. Yeah. Because
very challenging, but it can be done.
Yeah. And even if it's something small, like just to get started, give you like a little hope that they will respond, but yeah. And I totally agree. Just do it first. Whether or not it's their turn or they owe you.
Yes.
All right. Well, unless you want to say more about that, this seems like a good time to let people know how to reach you and the courses you had mentioned.
Yes. So I have 2 courses right now out in the world. The first one is A Flood of Love. It is a little bit longer. It is 6 modules, and kind of all of the stuff that you and I were talking about today really dive pretty deep into that. I give couples lots of questions. You get a lot of encouragement from me on like, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you build into this. You can do this course either on your own, Or if you want to sit down as a couple and do it, you can do it together. It's the more advanced version of kind of what I got. The second course is a mini course, and I kind of geared it towards guys. It's called A Guy's Guide to Getting More Action in the Bedroom. And most of the time, men, and this has just been my experience as a therapist, generally have no idea how to intrigue their wife or female partner into doing the things. They are usually like, hey, if I grab your boob, this should work, right? Like, this is what you... And so this is super easy, fast course. It's 20 minutes long. It gives you 6 very basic steps to really, from a man's perspective, how to get their female partner moving in a more physically intimate direction.
Yeah.
So you can find me at afloodoflove.com. And I'm on Instagram mainly at Stephie Flood of Love.
And I was going to say, back to like when I used to do stand up, that's what I used to talk about. Like, if you want to have sex more, you should do these things. Like, I related it to the love languages. If they're a words of affirmation person, you should probably say some nice things before you just go to touch. So
exactly. Yes. I think I'm with you in thinking about all the funny ways you could really mess this up, actually.
Yeah.
But yes, it really does have a lot more to do with emotionally connecting to your female partner than trying to physically connect.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think guys, they just get a little ahead of themselves and they're like, well, and most guys, honestly, like being slightly easier, they're like, just please touch me.
I was going to say, I read recently, totally switching subjects, that I think it's 70% of women are the ones that file for divorce. I don't know if there's anything to say about that, or just like some reasons why women would or should or shouldn't, or like when they're on the threshold, what would you say, or how do you get them to see if it's working or not, or could work?
Women will start to I think the best way somebody described it to me is, women are kind of like a basketball. And if they can bounce so many times and recover so many times, but eventually they're not going to bounce anymore. So women will typically put in a lot of effort to make the relationship work until they just can't. And that's typically why a divorce will happen, because they just cannot put it in any more energy or effort to the relationship. And it leaves a lot of men sometimes sort of dumbfounded. They're like, I didn't even know that you were this far down the line, like, which really kind of sucks, but that it is typical that will be what happens. And so what I encourage women to do is, instead of just continually like let that ball bounce lower and lower and lower, is the first few times that you're like, not loving that kind of behavior, start to have a conversation now, go to therapy now. Don't let it fester, because we will, as a female, your emotions will say, nope, I'm done now. And once a woman's done emotionally, that's pretty much the end of the relationship.
Yeah. And so I guess, what are some other things like men can do? I mean, there's a lot of difference. Like, men think women should be like them, and vice versa. So there's a lot of confusion between like just getting each other as, different genders. So
yeah, different genders, and being, and being in this day and age, right? Like, so again, I work with a lot of couples that are more in my age range, which is, 35, 40 plus crew, that have been together for a long time. I think that the biggest thing for men right now, and you were asking about books and some other really great books. Terry Real is another really great therapist. Talks a lot about us and the connection of us, and men kind of having to make a change right now, because women are in the working full time and having kids, and our partnerships need to be a full partnership. It cannot just be a woman going to work full time, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, like this, and the guy just goes to work. Like there has to be this shift now that it is a full partnership, that everybody is sort of doing different components of the business of being married. When we do that and we respect and appreciate what each other brings to that relationship, and verbally communicating a lot of the time, like, hey, let's appreciate each other for what we do and what we bring. And that keeps that bond strong. The more men can do that and say, hey, I appreciate the things that you're doing. And again, this goes back to that emotional connection. The more a man can emotionally connect to his female partner, the better she's going to feel. And the more likely she is to want to touch you. And most men, their love language is physical touch. They do have others, but for the most part, they really, really enjoy being touched. And it doesn't have to be sexual. It just, hugs, kisses, hold their arm, pat their behind, whatever it's going to be. And that's kind of the hamster wheel that we want to get on when it comes to like healthy relationship.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask if you had any final thoughts or like something you want to leave the people listening.
I would marriage is hard. Long-term relationships are hard. They're messy, getting fights. You think you want to call it quits. I do this for a living. My husband and I have been together 30 odd years now. And we've definitely been there where we're like, oh Lord, how are we going to do this one more day? And my encouragement is to just keep trying. Recognize that you're in a kind of messy place, or that something's kind of off, or it hurts, or it's just not working, and keep trying to talk. Keep trying to listen to your partner. We want to talk more at our partner. We want to listen, like ask them questions. Hey, how are you feeling about this? What could I do differently? How could I approach this differently that would help you? And if we do that, like, you'll get through kind of the muckiness, and you get back to kind of the nice balance and feeling good and confident in your relationship again.
Yeah, I have heard it's like lots of ebbs and flows, and there's good and bad. So just weather the bad and get back to some good for a while.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and your courses sound really cool, especially the mini course. Like that would help a lot of men figure out. But yeah, thank you again for being on. And if you like this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye, everyone.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.